Hello everyone, welcome to the series of VMware vSphere-Install, Configure, Manage. This is the introduction session, and in this session we are going to discuss about server virtualization, what is hypervisor, introduction to VMware vSphere, an overview of ESXi, what is the need of vCenter, overview of VMware and VMware tools, basics of VM networking, virtual machine hardware features, and an overview of vSphere features like vMotion, svMotion, high availability, DRS, and fault tolerance. Just remember that this is an introductory session. So over here we will be having a brief overview, but of course in the coming time, in the coming session, we will be having a detailed understanding of each and every terms and terminology. We will be doing a hands-on labs, and we will justify each and every terms and terminology which we will discussing theoretically. So coming to the introduction part of the server virtualization, the very first thing that comes to the mind is who should learn server virtualization. Guys, one with the basic knowledge of server network and IP addressing. Who has a basic knowledge of servers, who has a basic knowledge of network and IP addressing can go ahead with the server virtualization course. You don't need a depth understanding of Windows Server or Linux, but at least a basics of Windows Server and a IP addressing with basics of networking is a prerequisite to proceed with this course content. The person who wish to make their career in cloud computing should know that VMware is the base of cloud computing. When I say that VMware is the base of cloud computing, definitely for sure I will justify this. And to verify this, we will go to VMware website. Let me open the browser. I will go to VMware website. When I click on products, you will see that whichever cloud service it is, whether it is Alibaba, Azure, Google Cloud, IBM Cloud, Oracle Cloud, so any cloud provider, whoever is available in the market runs on VMware. VMware is basically a base of this. So I can say that VMware is a base of cloud computing. So when I say VMware vSphere, so guys, VMware is a company similar to like Microsoft is a company, VMware is a company, and vSphere is a product. So when I say that Microsoft Windows, so Microsoft is a company and Windows is a product. Similarly, VMware is a company and vSphere is a product. And the VMware vSphere is a product dedicated for server virtualization. When I say that dedicated for server virtualization, it means that it is dedicated for virtualization only. Like you have other operating system, like you have a Windows operating system, you have a Windows product, you have a Linux operating system. So when you install a Windows operating system, on the top of it you can install several applications like Google Chrome, you can install PDF, Acrobat Reader, and so many things. Similarly is the case with Linux. But over here, when I say that vSphere is a product, and of course there is an operating system which we will discuss soon after this. So it is dedicated for virtualization. It means that once it is installed, you can only perform a virtualization. You cannot install any other applications. You will come to know in some time why I am saying this when we will have a much more depth understanding on this. Earlier days, what used to happen? People used to buy a hardware from HP, Dell, or IBM. And what people used to do, they were installing operating system, and on the top of the operating system, they were installing an application or a database. So let's say, for example, if someone is installing a web application, then it is called as a web application server. If someone installs antivirus, it is called as antivirus server. It was an old concept, but nowadays a concept has been changed. Now what is happening? People will buy a very high-end hardware and they will install a hypervisor. Hypervisor is a operating system. So whenever you will buy a product of VMware vSphere, basically VMware will give you one hypervisor. A hypervisor is the operating system. It is also known as ESXi. You can also say that ESXi is an operating system or a hypervisor is an operating system. A hypervisor is a generic name. So you can either say hypervisor or you can say ESXi. So I will be using all over the time ESXi operating system. Whenever I will say operating system, it will be ESXi. So people will do, people will buy high-end hardware and they will install hypervisor. Hypervisor allows you to boot the hardware using ISO image, similar to what Windows ISO image do. It will allow you to boot, right? You will make a bootable USB or a bootable CD. Similarly, over here, you will make a bootable USB or a bootable CD, and the hypervisor will allow you to boot the hardware using the ISO image. Now, let's assume that you have a very high-end hardware from a company HP, IBM, or a Dell. So, what you're going to do whenever you will go to VMware vSphere and ask for a virtualization, they will provide you a hypervisor, which is the operating system, or a ESXi operating system developed by VMware. So you will make a bootable USB and you will boot using a ESXi operating system. This hardware you will boot using the operating system. Now once you install this hypervisor, as I told you that it is an operating system dedicated for virtualization. So once the hypervisor is installed on this physical hardware, it will only allow you to create multiple virtual machines where you can create Windows machine or a Linux machine or some other operating system. But since it is dedicated for virtualization, it will not allow you to install any Google Chrome or Acrobat or such kind of application. No, similar to what you can do in Windows or in Linux. Over here, no, because it is dedicated for server virtualization, and you can only install virtual machines on the top of this. So in short, I can say that creating virtual machines, multiple virtual machines on a single hardware is server virtualization. See what you did. This was your physical host, okay, a hardware, and on the top of the hardware, you booted the hardware using an operating system, which is ESXi or a generic name hypervisor. Once you install this operating system, then on the top of this, you created a multiple virtual machines, which can be a Windows VM or a Linux VM. So that's the reason I can say that creating multiple virtual machines on a single hardware is server virtualization. The virtualization is fundamentally better. Guys, now over here, consider that you have purchased a very high-end hardware from a company called IBM or HP or a Dell. This is basically a high-end hardware which you have purchased. And when you go to a VMware website and look for the vSphere, you will get ESXi hypervisor, which is nothing but dedicated for server virtualization. Once you have booted the hardware with the hypervisor, you have installed the ESXi or a hypervisor. What you can do is you can install multiple applications on Windows or Linux because it is general operating system. But remember, this ESXi is dedicated only for virtualization. See, whenever you will install, as I told you, why I am repeating, because I need to make your mind that it is a dedicated virtualization operating system. This hypervisor is dedicated for virtualization. So whenever you install a Windows or a Linux, you can install multiple applications on the top of it. But when you install a hypervisor or a ESXi, basically on the top of it, you can only create virtual machines. You cannot install any application. Now, coming to the installation part of a ESXi. ESXi is a very lightweight hypervisor and the size is around 385 MB, where the ESXi operating system is 180 MB only, and the remaining 200 MB is for VMware tools. VMware tools is something like a Windows driver. You have a Windows driver in Windows. Similarly, you have VMware tools. So when I say that ESXi is a very lightweight hypervisor of size 385 MB, 180 MB is the size of ESXi, and the 200 MB is for VMware tools. So I can say that it is one of the most robust and reliable operating system in the cloud operating world. VMware is one of the robust and reliable operating system in the cloud operating world, where you can run several operating systems on a single machine. You have purchased a high-end hardware, you have booted that hardware using a hypervisor, and once it is successfully installed, you can run several operating systems on a single machine. You can create shared pools of resources to optimize your infrastructure. What is VMware vSphere? It is the most advanced virtualization platform available. When I say most advanced virtualization platform available, I need to justify this. So to justify this, guys, the very first point we will be discussing after some time, after a few slides, we will discuss why it is most advanced virtualization platform available. Now let's understand it is a replacement for the VMware Virtual Infrastructure Suite. Why it is a replacement? So for that we need to understand the origin of VMware vSphere. Then we will be able to understand this point. See, in earlier days, the product was known as a VMware Virtual Infrastructure. Now it is VMware vSphere. In earlier days, it was VMware Virtual Infrastructure, VMware VI. Just remember, the first product of VMware came in the year 2001, and it was VI 1.0 version. But the product gained much more and more popularity in the year 2008, and it started with VI 3 or 3.5. Then in the year 2009, vSphere version 4 was launched. 2011, vSphere 5 version was launched. vSphere 6 came in the year 2015, and vSphere 7, which we are studying now, came in the year 2020. See, in the older version, the operating system which were there, we was having ESX. Up to version 3 or even version 4 was having ESX. So up to version 3, it was only ESX. Then in version 4, we were having ESX and ESXi. See, when I say ESX, ESXi, this in the coming session, see, as I told you, this is an introduction session. We will moreover focus on terms and terminologies. We will be getting familiar with the terms and terminologies. We will be making our basics clear, like what is VMware, what is vSphere, and other terms. So the difference, ESX and ESXi, we will justify this practically. But for your understanding, just have a theory over here that up to version 3, the operating system was called ESX. But in version 4, which was launched in 2009, ESX and ESXi came both in that version. Then from 2011, in vSphere 5, we only have ESXi. So whenever you buy vSphere, you will get operating system ESXi. It includes VMware ESXi operating system. Now understand one more terminology, then we will move further. Whenever we will be saying that this physical host, whenever we will dump this physical host, we will say ESXi host. And whenever we will call a virtual machine VM, we will be also calling it as guest operating system. Basically, a hardware on which you install ESXi is called ESXi host, and the virtual machines running on it is called as guest operating system. Why so it is called? See guys, let's understand an example. If you have hosted a party at your home, you becomes a host, and it is the responsibility of the host to take care of the foods, drinks, and all the other requirement for the guest. The guest will come, it will utilize the resources. The resources over here means food, drinks and all, and they will go away. Similar is the case over here also. See, whenever you will install a operating system, and the top of it you will be installing the virtual machines. So these virtual machines need to have RAM, CPU, storage, and so on. Storage part for now leave it. Moving on, we will discuss. But at least this needs RAM and CPU, right? So this RAM and CPU, these machines will be taking from this particular host, this particular hardware. This is the reason it is called host, because it is arranging the resources. And this is called guest because they are utilizing the resources from here. So this is the reason the hardware is called ESXi host, who is responsible to give the resources, to arrange the resources like RAM and CPU to the virtual machine. And this virtual machines running over here utilizes the RAM and CPU from the physical hardware. That's why it is called as guest operating system. So now let's assume you have procured a hardware, a high-end hardware from any of the vendor like IBM, HP, Dell. Very first, what you're going to do is you will be making a bootable USB or a CD. Nowadays, it is only a USB port coming. CD hardly you can find CD drive. So you will be booting hardware, this particular hardware from any of the vendor, whichever vendor you have procured from. You will boot this hardware from a USB which contains the operating system bootable file. So to install ESXi, we will be using basically this hardware. On this hardware, you will be installing the operating system ESXi. You will be installing, and this will be installed within few minutes. Now, once the installation is done, the very first thing over here on this ESXi host, what you are going to do is you will be configuring the IP address for the management purpose. You will set up the password also. Once this basic configuration of IP address and the password is set, you will move this machine to data center. Now, once this machine is moved to data center, this machine or this machine or this machine, you will move to data center after configuring the IP address and configuring the password for authentication. So now if you want to access this machine, what you will do? You will go to the web browser, you will enter the IP address, and for web browser, you will access these machines. Assume that you have a ESXi host over here, right? So what you are going to do, you will open a browser, enter the IP address and credentials, and log into this ESXi host. Similarly, you will do for this ESXi host and this ESXi host. But assume that instead of these three ESXi hosts, there are organizations who are having 100 of ESXi hosts running in their environment. So will you open this 100 tabs in your browser to access this ESXi host one by one? Of course, the answer is no. So there should be some method, right, to centrally manage all these ESXi hosts. All these 100 of ESXi hosts are there in your organization. You need some centralized management where you can manage this 100 of ESXi hosts from one place. Because practically it is not possible that you will open 100 of tabs and manage machine one by one. VMware says that we have a server called vCenter server. So this vCenter server is the application server, and the benefit of this server is you don't need to install this server, no need to install operating system, and the server is directly available as a vCenter server appliance on the VMware website. It means that it is a ready-made OS with application installed in virtual machine. Simply we have to go to the VMware site, we have to download this vCenter appliance virtual machine. Additionally, guys, this is an introductory session. We will just have an overview. We will go in detail for each and everything in the coming sessions. Now consider we have one vCenter server deployed. We will set the IP address, username and password. Now what we are going to do, we will open the browser, and now in the browser we will put vCenter IP with the credentials, and the vCenter console will open. Here what you are going to do in the vCenter server, once you open the vCenter server web console, You will be adding this ESXi host one by one, one by one, one by one. You will add the ESXi host. And once you add this ESXi host, you will be able to manage all this ESXi host from one place, that is vCenter server web console. You will be able to manage all this ESXi host. And just remember that vCenter 7 server can manage up to 2500, that is 2500 ESXi host. If you have 2500 ESXi host running in your environment, you can manage all those 2500 hosts using a single vCenter server. Basically, a user sitting over here will be accessing this vCenter server through web client, and he will be adding this ESXi host one by one. This is the one-time job. Once it is added, you will be able to manage all this ESXi host using this vCenter server, and this vCenter server can manage up to 2500 ESXi host. This much robust your vCenter server is. Now, if you remember, we have left one point, the most advanced virtualization platform. VMware vSphere is the most advanced virtualization platform available. And I said you that in the coming time, we will discuss this point as well in detail. So it is the right time now to discuss. So whenever you want to use the advanced features of VMware, you required a common storage, that is shared storage. See, I told you that it is an advanced virtualization platform, and when you will see the features one by one in the coming time, you will realize that how much advanced virtualization platform VMware is. But to use this advanced virtualization features, you need, requirement is all your ESXi host in your infrastructure should be connected to a common storage, which is called as shared storage. Now, why VMware is advanced platform? As I told you, you will realize this once you will be seeing the feature one by one in the coming time. We will have just a general overview. As I told you earlier also, again I am saying we will just have a general overview of these features now, one by one. And in the coming session, what we are going to do is we will have in detail discussion and hands-on labs for each and every feature. So whatever features we are going to discuss now, just to realize you that how much advanced virtualization platform VMware vSphere is, what I'm going to do, this feature itself is a session. You can say that some features will take 2 to 3 sessions for us to understand in detail and then perform a hands-on lab. And guys, trust me, whenever we will be doing a hands-on lab, each and everything written over in the slide we will be justifying practically. Additionally, one more thing will come to your mind over here, that you don't have a high-end machine, a laptop or a Windows, so how you will be performing a lab? Nothing to worry about. No Networks believes that a subscriber should be in sync with the instructor, and for doing this, I have some setups where you will be performing a hands-on lab and you will be always in sync with me. Moving on, now let's assume a scenario. This is a feature, vMotion is a feature. Let's understand this. Let's assume a scenario that in my environment, among the 3 or 4 ESXi hosts which are running, okay, now this is the environment. Assume that I have 3 hosts running over here, okay. So among the 3 hosts running, I am getting an error from one of the ESXi host saying that this, let's assume that this is the first ESXi host, ESXi 1. I am getting an error on this saying that one of my power supply is faulty or has an issue with motherboard. So for sure, all the virtual machines running in this ESXi host, all the virtual machines running in this ESXi host will go down. But VMware says don't make it down. What you can do is you can transfer all these machines live. Like let's say for example, this is the ESXi host, and all of the sudden this ESXi host goes down. So what VMware says, you can migrate this machine live to some other host. And when you migrate this machine, now as I told you that to use the advanced feature, what you need a shared storage, right? You can see that this is the ESXi host, this is the ESXi host, this is the ESXi host. Assume that the first ESXi host went down. VMware says that you can migrate all the virtual machines running on this ESXi host to another ESXi, to ESXi2, ESXi3. But as I told you, the requirement is that it should have a shared storage. So now what will happen? Let's assume that this ESXi host goes down due to any reason. You can migrate this VM live to another ESXi host, and when you migrate, your physical hardware will change, but the storage will remain same. Storage will not change. The feature of live migration is called vMotion. The feature of live migration is called vMotion. So now assume that you are getting a alarm or a alert notification on this particular ESXi host that there is a power failure, or there is some motherboard issue uh, expected, or something like that. So in that case, what you can do, you can live migrate the machine to other ESXi host using a feature called vMotion, but the requirement is your storage should remain same. I mean, you should have a shared storage. If all these machines are using a shared storage, then for sure you can migrate the machine. And guys, remember that whenever you create a virtual machine over here on the ESXi host, as I told you, the storage is a shared storage. What is going to happen? This machine will be taking the resources like RAM and CPU from the physical hardware, and the hard disk, that is the data of this machine, will be stored in the shared storage. So now the data is stored in the shared storage. If this machine goes down, or you want to make this machine, the physical machine, down for maintenance for any kind of reason, you will be doing a live migration where there won't be any downtime. This machine, a virtual machine, will be migrated to any other host over here. And since the data is stored in a hard disk, which is a shared storage, so if the machine goes to ESXi 2 or the machine goes to ESXi 3, it doesn't matter, because the hard disk is over here in the shared storage. This we can understand using a traditional way also. Now, let's say, for example, you are having a laptop with you in which you have a VMware workstation running. So, assume that your laptop is having some kind of hardware issue. What you can do is you can just remove your hard disk, and you can just put the hard disk in some other laptop, and the virtual machines which were there in the VMware workstation will work. See, I'm not going into the brief about the file system and all. No, this we will understand in the coming session. Just a general overview. So anyway, if the laptop goes down, you can remove the hard disk. You can put the hard disk in some other laptop, and in that your workstation will be working, and you can boot the machine. But the problem is over here, the downtime will be there, right? The laptop is not working, then you will remove the hard disk, you will put it in another hard disk. But in the corporate environment, in the production environment, this is not possible because you cannot bear the downtime. So traditional way, basically a VMware workstation is installed in client machine, basically used for the lab purpose. That's okay. But in production environment, you cannot afford the downtime. This is the best practice. You have a feature called vMotion, an advanced feature. And as I told you, to use the advanced feature, you need a shared storage. So if in case the hardware has some issue, you can live migrate the machine to another ESXi host without any downtime. Now consider you have a virtual machine running in ESXi 1, the host 1. And you before we proceed, let me tell you, whenever you will be installing a virtual machine, you know that two files are basic. There are lots of files created, but a basic file is vmdk file and a vmx file. Vmdk file is virtual machine disk file, and vmx file is the virtual machine configuration file. These two files are generated. So basically what is going to happen is you will be creating a virtual machine on the top of your ESXi host, where the RAM and CPU, the disk resources are being utilized by the host. The virtual machine will be utilizing these resources from the host, and the storage will be the shared storage where your vmdk vmx file will be stored. And now you have to perform some maintenance activity on one of your storage. Let's say this is the first storage and you have to perform the maintenance activity on this storage. Now during the maintenance activity, this VM whose VMDK file is stored in storage 1 may get crashed and it will be down because this VM has the VMDK file stored over here in this storage. Okay, although this is shared storage, let's assume that for this VM, the VMDK file is over here. So now if this storage goes down, this machine will crash for sure. VMware says that if there is activity going on one of your storage, what you can do is you can transfer your machine VMDK file, which means that you can just change the storage. You can transfer the VMDK file of this virtual machine to another storage. Just add a note that in vMotion, the physical hardware was changing. The storage was same. Over here, the physical hardware will remain same. Like over here, the VM is there, right? This VM is working on host 1 and it has a VMDK file stored over here in this storage. So what is going to happen? This VM, for this VM now, see, earlier the hardware was changing. The VM was, this virtual machine was getting shifted, it was getting migrated live from one hardware to another hardware and the storage was same. But in svMotion, the physical hardware, that is the ESXi host, will remain same, but the storage will change over here without any downtime, and this feature is called svMotion. Now to understand this, let's say you have a laptop. I'm explaining a traditional way. See, just for the explanation, for the example purpose, I'm saying this has nothing to do with the production environment. Let's say for example you have a laptop. Being an IT guy, you back up your laptop on the daily basis. One bad day, your storage, that is your hard disk, goes down. What you will do? You will plug a new hard disk. You will copy the data, and in the same hardware, you will again run that machine. Basically, you have a VMware workstation. Okay, I just miss out something. You have a VMware workstation installed in your machine. Everything was working fine. You have a data backup. One bad day, what happened? Like your storage goes down. What you will do? You will buy a new storage. You will put it, and you will copy the data. And again, the same hardware you will be using the machine. This is a traditional way of svMotion, because what is happening in vMotion? Physical hardware changes, storage remains same. In svMotion, physical hardware remains same, your storage changes. The next feature is DRS, Distributed Resource Scheduler. Guys, just imagine in your ESXi server running virtual machines, a CPU utilization goes high, or let's say your memory utilization goes high. For example, let's say an email alert is set if the utilization goes above 90%. For example, you will define a rule that solution is move this VM. Now let's say for example this is the things which is working, everything is working perfectly. Okay. Now in your environment for this particular host, your CPU utilization or a memory utilization goes high, let's say above 90%. What you can do, you can define over here a policy saying that if my utilization goes high, then move the VM to some other ESXi host. This perform vMotion. Now assume that, see, let me repeat again what is DRS. Now over here, let's assume for example, but before DRS, let's understand the scenario that you have an infrastructure running over here and all of a sudden says like this particular ESXi host running, the utilization goes high. So we have seen that in vMotion, what is happening? What we do in vMotion, basically, if your physical hardware has some issue, if the utilization is going high, if there is an issue with one of your power supply, in that case what you do a migration, live migration, that is vMotion. So over here also you can say that if in case, let's say for example the utilization of the memory or RAM is going high in this physical hardware, then perform a vMotion. This is a good solution that you have an infrastructure where you have a multiple ESXi host running. One of the utilization for the hardware is going high. You can perform a live migration, that is vMotion. The things came back normal. Assume that the vMotion is done and after some time again the utilization goes high. Again you will perform the live migration, that is vMotion. This is okay if you have 3 or 4 ESXi hosts or a 5 to 10 ESXi hosts running in your environment. This is okay. But assume that you have 100 of ESXi hosts running in your environment, and again the utilization goes high for one machine, for second machine, for 10th machine, for 20th machine in that case. So will you perform the vMotion again and again? Of course, the answer is no, because just to do this small job, that live migration again and again, again and again, again and again, your life will be totally frustrated. So VMware says that it has a solution. You can automate this vMotion. And automation of the vMotion is nothing but a distributed resource scheduler, DRS. What is the solution? Solution says that create a group of ESXi hosts. In your infrastructure, how much ESXi host you have, create a group of ESXi host. And in VMware term, the group of ESXi host is called cluster. So once you have created a cluster, on the top of the cluster, you will enable a feature called DRS. DRS stands for Distributed Resource Scheduler. It is an automation feature. Once we enable a DRS on this group, on this cluster, what will happen? It will automatically do a vMotion depending upon the value you have set. What you have to do in your infrastructure, once you create a cluster and on the top of the cluster you have enabled a DRS feature, you have to define that if the threshold value for the RAM reaches 70%, for the CPU it reaches 80%, then perform a vMotion. So it will automatically perform a vMotion. So DRS will automatically perform a vMotion at the configured value. Similarly, you can configure a DRS feature for storage as well, and that is called as SDRS. VMware high availability feature. Now, high availability means less downtime. Let's assume that due to some reason, one of my ESXi host will go down. In my infrastructure over here, in my production environment, one of these ESXi host goes down. So if this host goes down, it means that all the virtual machines running over here will go down. So VMware has a feature high availability, and the solution is what you're going to do. You will be creating a cluster of all these ESXi hosts, and on the top of the cluster, you will be enabling a feature called HA. Once HA is enabled, what will happen if in case any of the ESXi host goes down, then you don't have to worry. The things will be automated. All the VMDK file that are stored in the shared storage. Now see, over here you have a ESXi host. On the ESXi host you have virtual machines running, and the data, that is VMDK file and the configuration file, VMX file, is stored in the shared storage. So what will happen once the HA feature is enabled and any of your ESXi host goes down, HA feature will shift all the VM. It will shift all the VM of the impacted ESXi host to another running ESXi. Now assume that this particular ESXi goes down. If the HA feature is enabled and these all ESXi hosts are in the cluster, the HA feature will shift all this machine. I am not saying migrate or live migration. I am saying it will shift all this VM to another ESXi host. Now, over here, there will be a downtime. High availability, in high availability, there will be a downtime. In high availability, there will be a downtime. See, in vMotion, there was no downtime, it was a live migration. svMotion, there was no downtime, it was a live migration. In DRS, there is no downtime, it is a live migration and automated migration. But in high availability, there will be a downtime. what how much downtime it will be? The downtime is equal to the booting time of the machine. Now assume that the hardware failure is done over here. The HA will realize this. It will shift this machine to another ESXi host wherever the resources are available. And after shifting this machine, these machines will be power on. So the downtime will be equal to the power on time. So I can say that in HA downtime is there, but it is equal to the reboot time. Now in HA there is a downtime which is equal to the machine downtime, right? But there are some mission critical applications running on your VM. Let's assume that in your production environment over the ESXi host, there are some virtual machines which are mission critical and uh, you cannot afford downtime. So in that case, you require 100% uptime. That machine should never go down. Then in that case, VMware says that VMware has a feature that you need to enable, and the feature is called as fault tolerance. Enabling this feature will create a live replica. Now see over here, you have a ESXi host over here. Once you enable the feature fault tolerance, automatically it will create a live replica of the machine on another ESXi host. And as soon as this machine goes down, the live replica of the machine will come up. So how it works? Once you enable a feature, it will create a live replica. You can say a secondary machine, a copy of the machine of that server. This fault tolerance feature is basically enabled on a host. Sorry, not on the host, on the VM. Now you have enabled a feature on the machine, and now as soon as you enable this feature, what it is going to do, it will create a copy of the machine, a live replica of the machine will be created. Okay, and this will be created into another ESXi host within the cluster. But okay, so all of this feature you have to make a cluster, and you have to put the ESXi host in that cluster, and on the top of that only you can enable the feature. So now the running machine, the machine which is running is termed as the primary VM, and the live replica which is created on the another ESXi host is a secondary VM. Now if the primary goes down, secondary will become primary. And not only that, once the secondary becomes primary, again it will create a live replica on some other ESXi host. And again that machine will be called a secondary machine. So if in future again that machine goes down now, then again that secondary machine will become primary and it will again create a live replica. This is a never ending process, it goes on. So I can say that with fault tolerance in enable, you get super high availability feature with zero downtime. So these all were the features, and we have understood a basic requirement that if you want to use a very advanced feature in VMware, the requirement is you should have a shared storage. Of course, these also things we will elaborate in the future time. I mean, in the coming session, we will elaborate these things. We will be performing a hands-on lab, so you will have a much more clear understanding. So I believe that after seeing the features like a vMotion, where you can do a live migration of the machine without any downtime, svMotion, where you can do a live migration of the storage without any downtime, high availability feature, where if the ESXi host goes down, the machines are shifted to another ESXi host automatically. Then you have seen a DRS feature, distributed resource scheduler, where you can automate the live migration, and of course a fault tolerance where you cannot afford a downtime. VMware says I have a feature called fault tolerance. You can have 100% uptime using a fault tolerance feature. And after seeing all these features, I can say that VMware is a very high, or I can say that VMware is an advanced virtualization platform with so many features available. And of course, the VMware has made a life very easier. Top three reasons why VMware is a right IT investment in a tough economic environment. It reduces the physical infrastructure cost. It reduces the data center operating cost. See, where you were buying one server, On the top of it you are installing a operating system and over that application in the earlier time. So whenever you are installing a web application or that particular server was a web application server, you cannot use another server. But using a VMware vSphere, you will be installing an operating system, a hypervisor, and the top of it, you will be creating multiple virtual machines. So I can say that a physical infrastructure cost you are saving a lot. On one server, you can create up to 20 virtual machines. So where you are buying one hardware to run one application server, over here you are buying one hardware, I high end hardware to run up to 20 virtual machines. It reduces our data center and operating costs. When you have to run a 20 servers, you were deploying 20 physical hardware in the earlier time. Now, on one server, you're running 20 virtual machines, 20 application servers. So, of course, it will reduce the data center and operating cost. And the benefit is it will minimize the lost revenue due to downtime. You have seen the features like vMotion, svMotion, DRS, high availability, fault tolerance. Due to these features, where you can have a maximum uptime and you can use these features as per your production environment requirement, which we are going to perform a hands-on lab, and you all will be in sync with me without having a high-end laptop, a high good configuration laptop. You can perform this lab. So just stay tuned with me where we will be performing a hands-on lab, and of course you will be getting a knowledge of level 2 if in case you appear for the interview after referring my tutorials. For sure you will be shortlisted for a level 1 level 2 job of the VMware. So what are the topics we are going to cover in this session? We have seen the introduction to the virtualization. We will be further discussing about the VMware free editions for the small to medium business. We will be installing the ESXi. Of course, you all will be installing along with me. We will be deploying a vCenter server. And then for moving on, we will be going with the basic labs to we will be moving on the high-end labs. And these all topics we are going to cover where we will you can see the content over here, right? From creating and modifying the guest virtual machines, installing and configuring the VMware tools. We will see what are the hot plug features, what are the VMware or a vCenter server security. We will be configuring the vSphere storage. We will discuss about SAN and NAS storage, and we will be deploying it in the. We will be performing a hands-on lab on this. We will discuss about vSphere virtual networking. Then we will discuss about distributed switch virtual network. We will perform a hands-on lab on vMotion, svMotion. We will be performing a load balancing with DRS. We will be implementing a high availability with a VMware HA feature. We will see how the super high availability work, that is a fault tolerance features. We will be performing a lab on P2V converter, basically where we will be seeing how we can convert a physical machine into the virtual machine. And concluding, we will be looking after the update manager. That's all in this session, and then see you in the next session. Thanks for watching.